Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone, this is Councillor Puru.miah. So I've got a Voices of Tar Hamlets special. So today we've got two guests from Queen Mary University. I've got Luke and I've got Oliver, and it's about the Queen Mary University rent strike. So there's a rent strike happening. I came across it on Twitter and I'm like, wow. And it was a post on the history of rent strikes in Tar Hamlets, talking about the Bangladeshi squatters in the 70s and 80s, how they basically enforce their rights. And we have a history of rent strikes in the East End. So the last communist MP, Phil Paratin, he led a few rent strikes as well. So rent strikes do actually work, and they get better conditions for everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce. So I'll introduce Luke and Oliver. So Luke and Oliver, can you just say a bit about yourselves, please?
Okay, so I'm Luke. I'm a first-year student at Queen Mary's, and essentially the whole point is that we were sort of encouraged to go back to university, as many people were. Encouraged to go and live in accommodation, which, as it turns out, has now become sort of unsafe to live in, but we are still wanting to be charged for by the university.
Okay, cool. Oliver? And Oliver, do you want to say a bit about yourself, mystery man?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Oliver. I'm a first-year student at Queen Mary. And yeah, this rent strike is about the fact that the university is welcoming us back, not considering our safety, not considering the circumstances of the lockdown on the students and the financial strain or anything like that.
So just a basic explainer to residents. So a lot of people, I think most people haven't had an experience of a rent strike. A rent strike is when tenants refuse to pay the rent unless the landlord comes up with reasonable conditions, so to speak. So do you guys want to just talk about what your basic demands are? I know you have a Twitter account, and in that Twitter account, you got your demands pinned at the top. Do you want to just go through your basic demands as to why you're withholding your rent? What do you want Queen Mary University to do? And just to explain to people, most students live in halls of residence, and the halls of residence landlord is the actual university. So most students, I know from my experience, most first year students, many first year and then the second year, and then in the third year, people just find something themselves. That's when I was studying. So most students, the landlord is also the university, so they live in halls of residence. So what are your demands to your landlord, Queen Mary University? What is it that you guys want from them? What is it that they're doing that's so unreasonable?
Well, Oliver, actually, you've got quite a good story for unreasonable action, I suppose.
Is this the one when I came back after lockdown?
It is, yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, I had to go home in the beginning of November for a family emergency, funnily enough, and then lockdown got announced. So I moved back home. I brought a lot of stuff home, and when lockdown ended, I wanted to go back to uni. I had a load of work to do, and I needed the space. It's hard to work at home because there's like 3 other people here doing their own degrees, and I came back, and my room was empty. They cleared everything out of my room, apart from a painting. Luckily, they let me keep that. They cleared everything out, and I contacted the uni, and they were just slow to respond. Someone talked to me about it immediately, but then I didn't hear anything for weeks, and it was stressful because, luckily I brought very valuable stuff home, but it's the idea that someone just walked in my room, took my stuff. I think, no concern for COVID and my privacy, my safety. What if I was in that room? What if I was asleep? It was just, and I didn't even inform the university I was leaving, but I think they still haven't sufficient. They said it was part of the cleaning stuff, but they're not meant to clean your rooms. So I have no idea how that happened, and they haven't explained. And this is just one example of the treatment that students get in university halls. I was in another situation where I had COVID. I was basically just in bed. I got it worse than I thought I would, and the toilets weren't working. And so I had two people who had just flown in from India and Italy who had to quarantine in rooms next to my room inside a flat. And we weren't allowed any contact, but I had COVID. They could potentially have COVID. And our toilets didn't work. And we were just stuck inside this flat and we couldn't leave. We couldn't go to another toilet. It was just... And I pay for that, and this is the university that's supposed to be taking care of me, providing me with an education, they're trying to improve my life, but, they just made it worse,
So what are your... So this is part of a national campaign. So it's not just university students in Queen Mary. University students are treated really badly by other universities as well. But what are your demands? What is it that you want in exchange for you guys paying rent? What are these? What do you want your landlord, the university, to do?
So we have 8 demands. So that will be updated on the Twitter because that is actually out of date now to reflect the current lockdown situation. We've had to change it. So our first demand is that the university will commit to a 30% rent reduction for the rest of the year, which is actually very little compared to what other universities have got. So they've got 30% for the entire year. They've had rebates. They've had various... They've been asking for 40. We're only going in asking for 30, hoping to get 30. So that's the first demand. The second is that the university will allow no penalty early releases from the contract, which, to be honest, I think is just outrageous. That's not in there anyway, in the fact that people have to move home, people have situations with the lockdown, and it's just frankly unsafe to be returning. And it's unsafe for the community, for the rest of us to return from all corners of the country, coming back into Tower Hamlets. We would have to be socialising. It's not safe for the community or for us to be returning, but we feel like we should because we're paying for it. £145 a week is the minimum, I think. That's the cheapest, which is where I'm at. The third one we have is that Queen Mary will ensure no job losses for the cleaning, teaching staff or the maintenance staff, because we want to stand in solidarity. So we've got the cleaners union on board and the unions of everyone who works with us. We don't want them to be losing their jobs just because Queen Mary won't, Oliver, do you want to do the rest?
There's one we've recently added by a poll to our almost 300 rent strikers, rebates for the rent that we've paid during lockdown, because we're essentially paying for accommodation that we can't use. So
cool. And is that all your demands, or are there more?
Oh no, there's more.
Okay.
We have also that there's a better support system for students, because frankly the support run out is shocking. We've had a couple of we've put out a call out for stories of people who've had to isolate. So you just heard Oliver's one. And we've had many other stories where people have been told, you have to isolate, you have COVID-19, but you're not going to get given any food. The cleaning staff are still going to be sent into your flats, this sort of thing. It's just awful. It's just awful. So we're going to ask them to make that better, obviously. We're also going to ask them to review the conditions in the halls of residences, because we've had a number of halls horror stories, as we call them, such as people having mold growing out of their carpet, mice, lots of just rodent problems. Oliver, can you think of any other shocking ones? There's a few.
There's so many. I mean, a common, I bring it up again, but a common one is the toilets just don't work. And it's just such a small thing that just being able to have to go to the toilet without ringing up someone just so you can flush it. It's awful.
It sounds like a rogue landlord.
Yeah.
Oh, university.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it sounds like one of those cowboy landlords, but it's not something like Queen Mary, but
Yeah,
you
it
never
seems.
know. Yeah, that's it. Rogues come in disguises. So, cool. Is there any other demands?
Apart from that, we just have, yes, we've got the review of the standards of living. We also have a demand that they will take no disciplinary action against the rent strikers. So obviously we don't want to do all this, and then they say, okay, and now we're going to take disciplinary action. And that's our final demand there.
So a lot of people, so like a lot of people who watching this read a lot of right-wing newspapers, kind of ish. You'd be surprised how many people read the Sun or the Daily Mail on the lunch break, etc., or listen to LBC radio, which I find bizarre, but people always do. So they got this idea that students have got it easy, kind of. You gotta get free money. Guys got free, you got a pad. You're just chilling, going out clubbing, kind of ish, and then get a degree out at the end of it, and then get a job, kind of ish. So you guys got loads of money, kind of ish. So what are you guys complaining about? That'll be one of the Daily Mail readers that I know would be saying.
Well,
Oliver,
I think one of the most important things to say is that regarding that is we don't have any money. Hence, if we had all the money in the world, I don't think we'd be quite as upset as we are. But it's the fact that, most students get a very small loan. So it's money that they spend on just living that they'll actually have to pay back anyway. And of course, in London and at Queen Mary, the rent is very expensive, much more expensive than other universities. And the cost of living is high, at Queen Mary. And we have very little money. And plus the fact that, there's also this impression that it's a bunch of middle-class children with wealthy parents and they send their kids to uni. But no one's got any money. I personally come from a single-parent household. My mum, in fact, she's unemployed right now. She was just sacked, but she worked a minimum wage job. She worked in a school. And many people who did have parents who could perhaps help them, they can't because their finances have been wrecked by the lockdown, people losing jobs, people unable to find work, especially those who work in construction or things like that. And students can't find jobs. There's no jobs around. So students are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They signed up for something, university. They got one thing that's completely different, just basically YouTube university, dished out loads of money for that. And then there's no money from their parents, no money from the government or jobs that we are. And, and so essentially with the rent strike, what we're saying is, well, we're paying for something we shouldn't, not that just that we can't use it, but we shouldn't be. I live in Basildon Borough, which has, I think, last time I checked, 1 in 18 people had COVID. I shouldn't be going to Tower Hamlets and potentially spreading it. It's morally wrong to do that. And so uni students are stuck between a rock and a hard place. We really haven't got the finances to pay for something we don't even get to use.
So it looks like they're putting profits before people, kind of ish. So I just want to explain to the viewers, universities are private institutions, kind of ish. So they're not like Tower Hamlets Council kind of ish, or say like a government department. They're actually private institutions. So all the money goes back to the institution, and they decide how they spend. And obviously, they'd like to make a profit. So it looks like, from what Oliver and Luke are saying, is that Queen Mary's taking advantage of their tenants, which are the students, like any good rogue landlord, and just putting the screws on them, kind of ish. And that's always seems to happen throughout history, or in various experiences I've had, is people at the top or don't want to make any losses, kind of ish. They always want to pass on their losses to people at the bottom, kind of ish. Landlords always like to pass on their bad investments onto higher rents as tenants. and it looks like Queen Mary are following suit as a bad landlord and a rogue landlord, just screwing their tenants, and if Queen Mary could do it, so could any other landlord. And I think the fight back needs to start now, kind of issue. We could embarrass Queen Mary into being a responsible landlord, then we could move on to other landlords in the area who are screwing their tenants, and get them to behave. So what is it? What can someone watching this video do to support yourselves? Is there something that they could sign or somewhere that they could follow to get news? What can they do, sort of ish?
So tonight we're going to be writing up a letter that people can sign, they can copy, they can paste, they can email to, say, people in the university, maybe to the councillors. We also have social media on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, where we post updates quite consistently. So it's been going up fast recently as well. We post when we get to sort of milestones. So we got to 100 rent strikers, 200, coming up to 300 now. We also just post about the sort of history of it to explain the context of our rent strike and how it's not just an isolated incident. That all goes on our social media.
No, cool. So people could follow you on social media. If there are any students watching this, join the rent strike. But also there'll be a link to a letter which people could, an open letter that people could copy and paste, send it into the university or sign. There's been success stories, isn't it? Like other universities have caved in, kind of issue. This is sort of like a nationwide movement where universities that more or less become profit-making machines are basically extracting as much money out of their students as possible to subsidize COVID-19 costs, and students have fought back. So there have been successes like the University of Manchester. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. Manchester, Bristol, and Glasgow so far, I believe. Probably many more to follow, and there may even be more now that I've not heard of yet.
And the deadline for this, for you, Queen Mary, to come back to, is the rents are due on the 16th of Jan. And hopefully they act reasonable, kind of ish, and not act like a rogue landlord or a rogue institution, sort of ish. They say all these good things about how there's such a community organization. I personally haven't met any residents that have benefited from the benefaction of Queen Mary, but they always say that they are. So, but it seems like they're saying one thing and doing something else.
Yeah, they like to pride themselves on being the Russell Group University with the highest proportion of students from a state school background, which is true. I can see that in my students, my peers, and myself.
Yeah.
However, they don't treat us in that way because obviously it follows if you're taking in people from a state school background, from these normal backgrounds, as opposed to Oxford or Cambridge, where half the students are privately schooled. It makes sense that we're going to have less money. But they use this and they say, well, we're still going to milk you for all the money we can get. Of course.
Well, anyone could talk the talk, is whether Queen Mary could walk the walk, kind of ish. So it's time for Queen Mary to walk the walk, put their money where their mouth is, kind of ish, instead of putting it in their pocket. But yeah, cool. So people watching this, there'll be links with the video, with the social media account to the Queen Mary rent strike, so you can follow it, and also links to the letter, and let's see what happens, whether Queen Mary blink on the 16th or not. And if they don't, then we have to put the temperature up, in it. That's what it is, guys. But let's see. But thanks for joining me, Oliver and Luke, and I wish you all the luck and all the solidarity, and let's see if Queen Mary act responsibly. So thanks, guys, and I hope everything goes well with your campaign, and I look forward to touching base with you again.
Yes, thank you very much
for having us.